The headline screams that votes are for sale, but this is a legal sale of vote. What kind of votes are you allowed to sell? Well, you're allowed to sell the votes associated with the shares of common stock that you may own. In this explainer video and Q&A breakdown, we're going to take a look at how investors vote their shares, how they use proxies and proxy statements if they can't attend the corporate meeting, and take a look at this company that's trying to allow you to sell your vote to somebody who might value it more than you. Now, when you hear about companies and shareholders voting, the other term you always hear is proxy. Now, what is a proxy? And a proxy just means that you're giving somebody else the authority to represent you. And now it typically is associated with actually voting. You are my proxy at the shareholders meeting, and you're going to vote my shares based on the instructions or directions that I give you. And the way that this has become formalized is through a proxy statement. And the proxy statement is used because public companies, by state law, have to hold an annual shareholder meeting. So every year, every public company says, you, the shareholders, the owners of our company, get to come and we are going to vote on certain corporate matters. What are we going to vote on? Well, we're going to vote on who to elect to the board. We're going to vote to approve the auditors who look at our financials. We're going to have, this is one of my favorites, a non-binding vote on executive compensation. So the executives ask the shareholders, do you think we're being paid enough or not enough? And if the shareholders say, we think you're paid too much, the executives are like, good talk, glad to hear it. But remember, that's not binding. We'll decide how much to pay ourselves. We'll also vote on various shareholder proposals. We, the owners, the shareholders, can propose that the corporation take certain actions. And the other shareholders can vote on what I, as a shareholder, think the company should or shouldn't do. And lastly, we might vote on some extraordinary or out of the ordinary matters like mergers, acquisitions, and major asset sales. How do we know what we should do as a company for these kinds of things? Well, we ask the owners, who are the shareholders, and they get to vote on it. But like I said, you may not want to go to the annual shareholders meeting. You might be busy. You might own hundreds of different stocks. You may not care because you just don't own that much. So how can you vote? Well, here we're looking at the 2023 Coca-Cola proxy statement. And they're saying, owners, shareholders, we are going to have our annual meeting on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 at 8:30. So this already happened. And you could go and attend in person. But like I said, you may not want to do that. Maybe you're busy on April 25th. So you also could vote online, by mail, or by phone using this proxy, where you are going to give your authority, your ability to vote to somebody else. And I'll show you in a minute that you're not just being like, you get to decide on my behalf, but you say, here's how I want you to vote. And interestingly, only about 30% of individual investors vote their shares at all. 70% of investors just don't vote. They just don't care. Either they're not interested, or they don't have enough shares that it makes a difference, or they don't know, or they get the proxy statement and they throw it right in the trash. But if you did want to vote, you would read through this document and you would see at the end, there's a proxy card. And you can see what Coca-Cola is asking its shareholders to vote for. You can see up on the top there in the first dark, bold text, we are electing board of directors. So do you want to elect Herb Allen? You could be for him, against him, or abstain, not vote. Then we go to Mark, then we go to Anna, then we go to Christopher, then we go to Barry, and all these people that they are proposing to join the board. You get to vote for that. You can see that they're voting to confirm the corporation's auditors, the executive compensation, and then those shareholder proposals that I mentioned. So if you were a shareholder, you would get this proxy card, you could fill it out, you would then submit it, typically to company management, who would then vote your shares in accordance with what you did. But like I said, most people don't vote at all. Why not? Well, proxies are long, and maybe I only have 100 shares. So like, what's the difference going to be? And even if I do care, do I know anything about these directors and the auditor and all the different pieces of the puzzle here? Not really. In fact, if you look at this proxy statement, this is the Coca-Cola proxy statement. It's 127 pages of single-spaced legalese. Look at this. It's just rolling right there. Look at all this text. Are you going to read all of that so you can make an informed, educated decision? 127 pages? Probably not. So this article is kind of interesting because it's talking about, well, maybe there's investors out there who do want to vote, who do have enough incentives to really dig in and understand what Coca-Cola is proposing and vote one way or another. So this company, Shareholder Vote Exchange, created a marketplace so you, as a shareholder who don't care about the votes, could sell your shares to somebody who does. Now, they say that your shareholder vote could be worth anywhere between 0.1% and 5% of the share price. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if people are actually collecting that kind of money, but that means if the vote's worth 2% of the share price and the stock's trading at $100 per share, then what they're saying is that that vote piece of it might be worth $2 per share. And for every share you're willing to sell that vote, maybe you can capture that $2. Now, again, like I said, I've never used this company. This was the news. I thought it was a really interesting innovation in the financial space about, again, trying to separate different elements and aspects of the value of owning a share of stock. You know, you have the right to appreciation. You have the right to dividends. You have the right to vote. Well, they're letting you monetize that right to vote. And I thought that was pretty cool. The state laws typically allow shareholders to sell their votes. You can't sell it for fraudulent purposes. You can't sell it in a deceptive or manipulative way. But if somebody values that vote, you're typically allowed to actually sell it. So we'll see what happens in the future and where this might go. Now, let's break down an SIE practice question that's drawing on these ideas about proxy statements and voting your shares. So with that, as we always do, be sure you read the question, pick your best answer, identify why the right answer is right, why the wrong answers are wrong, then click play and I'll break down the question with you. We'll wrap it up with an SIE takeaway. So, XYZ Corporation is preparing for its annual shareholders meeting, and it is in the process of sending out proxy statements. What is the primary purpose of these proxy statements? Take a look at the 4 answer choices. We just talked about proxies, so you should be in a good position to understand what they do. All right, have you had a chance to do the question? Were you able to land on B as the best choice, describing the primary purpose of proxies? Proxy statements inform shareholders of the issues to be voted on, electing the board, ratifying the auditors, non-binding on comp, shareholder proposals, whatever is being done, and can assign someone else the authority to vote your shares at the actual meeting. What do each of the other answer choices kind of get wrong? Well, the proxy doesn't report the company's financial performance over the past year. What reports the financial performance? We'd be looking at the Form 10-K for those audited financials. We might look at 10-Qs for unaudited financial performance over the past quarter. C, to announce the date and location of the annual shareholders meeting. Now, the proxy statement will have that information, but why is C not as good an answer as B? Because that's not its primary purpose. Sure, it does convey that, but if you force me to pick between B and C, I'm going with B every time. That's the core meaning and purpose for it. Now, some of you might have said, but it does do that, and I'm going to remind you, for these kind of regulatory exams, you want to pick the best answer. You want to think, what do I get to show the regulators I know in this question? And so do you want to show the regulators that you know the proxy has the date and location of the meeting? Sure, that's not a bad thing, but what would be a better thing? To tell them that you understand that it's what are we voting on and granting that authority for somebody else to vote those shares. And D, to provide the results from the annual meeting. That's not going to be coming out on the proxy statement. So what is your SIE takeaway? Well, your SIE takeaway is that the proxy informs shareholders of what they're voting on and gives them the opportunity to authorize somebody to vote their shares if they're not planning to attend the annual meeting. Thanks so much, everybody, and I'll see you here on the next SIE Breakdown.